The evening started like any other, with dinner on our usual table, chopsticks poised over steaming dishes. Then Mary's words changed everything. "Honey, I think I might be in love with someone else." Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it felt like thunder in my ears. I set my chopsticks down carefully, as if they might break. My heart raced, but my voice remained steady as I asked her the questions burning in my mind. When did this happen? How far has it gone? Who is he? My mind drifted back to the day I proposed to her, a memory I had treasured for nearly a decade. She had worn a flowing white dress that caught the sea breeze, her beauty drawing admiring glances from everyone around us. I can still picture the sunset painting the sky in shades of orange and pink as I knelt on one knee, presenting the ring I had saved months to buy. Her tears of joy caught the last rays of sunlight, turning them into diamonds as she nodded, "Yes." That same evening, she had asked me a question that now felt prophetic. "What would you do if one day I stopped loving you?" I had dismissed the possibility, promising such a day would never come. She had held me close, vowing her eternal love. She knew my past, how I had been abandoned twice, first by my birth parents, and then by my adoptive family after their bankruptcy. She understood why I clung so desperately to promises of forever. "Tell me about him," I said, returning to the present. "What makes Tom so special?" I studied my wife's face as she spoke about this ordinary-looking man who had somehow captured her heart. She pushed the food around her plate, her words painting a picture of someone remarkably familiar. "He has a simple mind, is hardworking and kind," she said softly. "Despite coming from nothing, he has such determination." Each word felt like a mirror reflecting my younger self, the same qualities she had once admired in me. The irony wasn't lost on me. "But you're carrying our child," I reminded her gently, my hand instinctively moving toward her slightly swollen belly. Her response was quick but measured. "I will give birth to the child." I nodded, understanding the weight of her words and what remained unspoken. That night, after her shower, Mary called me to our bedroom, our shared space for nearly a decade. Instead, I retreated to the guest room, claiming I needed space to think. As I lay there in the dark, I couldn't help but wonder, what had happened to those 10 years of devotion? I had loved her with everything I had, cared for her in ways both big and small. Now, in the silence of the guest room, I questioned if any of it had really mattered. Our paths crossed in that small interview room, though we were worlds apart in experience. Mary was already a seasoned professional, interviewing for a business manager position with a portfolio of achievements under her arm. I was just a fresh college graduate, nervous and unprepared, hoping to land my first job as a salesperson. She noticed my shaking hands and sweaty forehead in the waiting room and did something unexpected. She came over and shared her interview tips. Her warm smile and encouraging words before I entered the interview room gave me the confidence boost I desperately needed. Fate had a funny way of working things out. We both got hired that day, and in an unexpected twist, I was placed directly under her supervision. Some might have called it coincidence. I called it destiny. My childhood experiences of abandonment had taught me a harsh lesson. Strength was the only path to security. So I threw myself into the work with everything I had. My daily routine became almost military in its precision. Before the sun peeked over the horizon, I was already on the bus, ready to tackle my sales route. I developed a strict eating schedule that matched my determination. Breakfast was always whole wheat bread and purified water, simple but nutritious. Lunch was toast with spring water, chosen carefully to keep me energized through the afternoon rush. Dinner became my reward. Powerade for electrolytes and pan French bread, my small luxury after a hard day's work. These weren't just meals, they were fuel for my ambition. My dedication paid off sooner than anyone expected. By the end of the first quarter, My sales numbers weren't just good, they were exceptional, surpassing even veteran employees. The first thing I did with my bonus was take Mary out for dinner. It wasn't just about celebrating, it was about thanking her for all the guidance she'd given me, all the little tips that had helped me succeed. During that dinner, I saw Mary in a different light. She wasn't just my manager anymore. Her beauty was striking, yes, but it was her gentle nature, her sharp mind, and her incredible work ethic that truly captivated me. She was the most sought-after woman in the office. Her desk was practically a flower shop with all the bouquets from admirers. But I had a different approach. Every morning, without fail, I brought her breakfast. Simple, consistent, thoughtful. While others tried to win her with grand gestures, I showed her reliability and care. To everyone's surprise, especially mine, it worked. Our office romance didn't sit well with everyone, particularly the general manager who had his own unrequited feelings for Mary. He used company policy against workplace relationships as an excuse to fire us both. But what he meant as punishment became our opportunity. We took our combined expertise and started our own company. Our knowledge of the industry and our complementary skills made us an unstoppable team. The business flourished beyond our wildest dreams. As we stood at the peak of our success, with everything falling perfectly into place, I thought it was time to expand our family. The suggestion to have a child seemed like the natural next step in our journey together. Looking back now, I wonder if that was the moment things began to change, though I couldn't see it then. Life has a strange way of bringing people together. While Mary and I were preparing for our own family, she threw herself into charity work, believing good deeds would bring blessings to our future child. That's how Tom entered our lives. His story wasn't just sad, it was the kind that makes you question the fairness of the world. Tom's life had been marked by tragedy from his first breath. His mother died giving birth to him, and that loss seemed to trigger an avalanche of misfortune. His father, once a respectable man, crumbled under the weight of their bad luck. Desperate for answers, he turned to fortune-telling books, seeking meaning in their cryptic pages. But the darkness in his mind twisted everything he learned. One stormy night, convinced his elderly neighbors were cursing his family, he committed an unthinkable act that ended with him facing the death penalty. Tom was left alone, surviving on whatever scraps of kindness his village could spare. When we heard his story, Mary's eyes filled with tears. I held her as she cried, and we both promised to give Tom a better future. At first, everything seemed perfect. Tom threw himself into his work with an enthusiasm that was infectious. Every time he visited his hometown, he'd return with local delicacies, his gratitude evident in every small gesture. But survival instincts run deep. Years of homelessness had taught Tom to read people like books. It was his only defense against the world. He studied Mary's devotion to me with careful eyes, learning our history, understanding what made our bond special. Then, slowly, subtly, he began to change. His clothes started matching my style. His mannerisms began to mirror mine. It was like watching someone try to become my shadow. One day, I commented on his transformation, trying to keep things light. He just scratched his head and flashed that disarming grin of his. "Brother George, you're my idol," he said, his voice full of what seemed like genuine admiration. "Sister-in-law told me about your struggles. I want to be just like you." I remember patting his shoulder, feeling oddly proud yet slightly unsettled. "Actually," I told him, "most of my success comes from your sister-in-law. Everything I've done was to give her a better life. She's the real backbone of this company." As I spoke, I noticed how his eyes lingered on Mary, who was looking at me with such love. There was something in his gaze that should have warned me. "I want to find someone like sister-in-law," he declared. "I'll work just as hard for her." I playfully kicked his backside, teasing him. "Working hard for my wife, are you?" His panic was almost comical as he stumbled over his words. No, no. I mean someone like her, brother. I would never. Mary was doubled over with laughter beside us, playfully punching my arm. But looking back now, I wonder if I missed something in that moment. A flicker in Tom's eyes, a slight tremor in his voice. Sometimes the most important signs are the ones we choose not to see. Mary's words from that playful day echoed in my mind. He's just a kid. Don't take it seriously. How ironic those words feel now. Even after everything, I still can't comprehend what she sees in Tom. As Mary's pregnancy progressed into its 8th month, I threw myself into caring for her. Even though her heart might have drifted away, the child she carried was still mine, my flesh and blood, my future. When she asked me to stay with her for the final 2 months, I didn't hesitate. I arranged a 3-month leave from work, delegating everything to the general manager with strict instructions. Don't contact me unless it's absolutely crucial. Then came that day, the day I learned just how deep this situation went. I was about to unlock our front door when I heard voices inside. What I heard stopped me cold. Why are you here? I told you not to come. Mary's voice was sharp, unlike her usual gentle tone. Sister, I've been trying to reach you for days. Tom's voice was pleading. I brought you a rooster from my hometown. It makes great nourishing soup. I don't want a nanny, I heard Mary defending my care of her. He takes better care of me than any nanny could. The conversation turned to money, and what I heard next made my blood run cold. Mary had apparently transferred him $500,000 last week, bought him a house and a car. Yet here he was, claiming he'd lost it all in some business venture. I'm not as lucky as Brother George, he whined, falling back on his familiar routine. And I don't have a beautiful, capable wife like you to help me. His voice took on that practiced tone of self-pity. Since I was little, without parents, digging through trash for food, facing all those looks of disgust. Enough, Mary cut him off, her voice heavy with impatience. Always the same story. Just go. I'll transfer the money later. Standing there, listening to this exchange, I felt like I was watching a play where I'd been cast as the fool. My wife had been secretly supporting him with what we'd built together. Yet here he was, playing the same sad tune about his hard life, while squandering everything handed to him. For the first time, I heard genuine irritation in Mary's voice when speaking to him. But somehow, that didn't make me feel any better. The whole scene felt surreal. My pregnant wife, our money being handed out in secret, and this man who'd worked his way into our lives like a careful thief. I stood there, hand still on the doorknob, wondering what other secrets lay behind that door. The moment I turned the doorknob, Tom's words cut off mid-sentence. His face drained of color when he saw me, mumbling a quick greeting before practically running out the door. Mary approached with her usual warm smile, reaching for my coat. But for the first time in our marriage, I pulled away from her touch. If I had known you had someone else to take care of you, I said, my voice as cold as winter frost, I wouldn't have bothered taking 3 months off. The words came out like ice shards, sharp and cutting. Her hand hung in the air between us, her smile crumbling like autumn leaves. The irony wasn't lost on me. For years, I had handled her like fine china, precious and delicate. Even on my worst days, when business deals went south or clients were impossible, I'd pause outside our door, put on a smile, and walk in as if everything was perfect. I'd built my world around protecting her happiness. Honey, it's not what you think, she started, but I cut her off. I know you like him. I accepted that. I promised to let you be together. My voice grew harder with each word. You wanted to have the baby first. I agreed. You wanted me to care for you. I took leave without hesitation. I don't care how much of our money you spend on him after the divorce. You'll still have your half of the company. I paused, letting the bitterness seep into my next words. You know what I'm capable of. If I wasn't worried about hurting you, Tom's fate would be very different. What more do you want from me? Are you so eager to parade him through our home just to spite me?" All my buried pain erupted like a volcano, leaving Mary standing there speechless, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. I couldn't bear to look at her anymore, so I retreated to our bedroom, collapsing onto the bed in a haze of anger and exhaustion. When I woke up, the clock on my phone read 9:00 p.m. Panic shot through me. I'd forgotten to make dinner for my pregnant wife. Whatever was happening between us, that was still my child she was carrying. I rushed to the door, only to stop short at what I saw. There was Mary, sitting at our dining table surrounded by all my favorite dishes. When she noticed me, she quickly wiped away her tears, forcing a smile that broke my heart all over again. "Honey, you're awake," she said softly, as if the afternoon's confrontation had never happened. "Go wash up. I'll heat everything for you." She stood up, plate in hand, moving toward the kitchen with that careful grace she'd maintained even in her 8th month of pregnancy. The scene before me was achingly familiar. The caring wife, the thoughtful meal. Yet everything felt different now, like looking at a beloved photograph that had somehow been altered. I stood there, caught between anger and love, watching her move through the motions of our normal life while everything around us was falling apart. My phone kept lighting up with Mary's calls and messages, each notification a fresh stab of pain. In my anger, I didn't just ignore them, I blocked them all. Still, I couldn't ignore my responsibilities completely. The nanny would be starting today. Whatever was happening between Mary and me, our child shouldn't suffer for it. As I sat there, memories of our life together played through my mind like an old film reel. My nervous first confession, the softness of our first kiss, the proud moment I met her parents, all those small moments that had built our life together. In just over a month, they would all be just memories. 3 sharp knocks pulled me from my reverie. My secretary entered with a stack of documents, the public statement, legal papers, and headshots of potential spokespersons. "Just leave them here," I said wearily. "Unless it's urgent, I need some time alone. I'm exhausted." After she left, I began reviewing the documents. The legal team had done their job well. Both the statement and lawsuit were flawless. Then I turned to the portfolio of potential spokespersons. There were faces from every corner of entertainment: singers, actresses, internet celebrities. I immediately discarded the influencer profiles. We needed someone more substantial. That's when I saw her, Amy. She seemed to leap off the page with you. Amy had said no countless times, but the shadows kept chasing her. The big shot producer wouldn't take no for an answer, and her own company, the people who were supposed to protect her, pushed her toward him like a lamb to slaughter. Every phone call made her hands shake, but she couldn't just ignore them. She refused to play by the dark rules of showbiz, but the weight of it all was crushing her spirit. That's why she'd been so out of sorts lately. Her story spilled out between sobs that seemed to echo across the set. "Singing has been my whole life since I was little," she choked out, her makeup running in dark streams. "It's all I ever wanted." Her crying drew more and more curious stares from the crew, making me feel like the villain in this scene. "Please, Amy, try to calm down. Listen, we need to finish filming, but I promise I can help you figure this out." Before I could explain further, her phone lit up again, buzzing like an angry hornet. My blood boiled at the sight. "Hand it over," I demanded, and she passed it to me with trembling fingers. The screen showed Brother Friendship, CEO Lee. Even the name oozed sleaze. I answered without hesitation. His voice came through, dripping with fake sweetness. "Amy, have you thought about our chat? We just locked down a huge movie deal, all A-list stars. Opportunities like this don't come twice. Second female lead, no audition needed. What do you say?" I cut in, my voice sharp as steel. "Why don't you cast your own mother instead? You've wasted enough of our time. Unless you want your I ended up at a bar, drowning my sorrows. Usually I can't handle much alcohol. but that night I couldn't seem to pour it fast enough. By some twist of fate, Amy was there too, celebrating with friends. She looked different that night, elegant and sophisticated, a far cry from her usual sweet demeanor. When she spotted me drinking alone, she pulled me into their celebration. It wasn't until later that I learned it was her birthday. Amy guided me to the seat of honor and stayed close all evening. Her friends teased her. Still trying to impress the boss even after hours? She just smiled, keeping her thoughts to herself. The alcohol from earlier mixed with more drinks, and everything faded to black. When consciousness finally returned, I found myself in my own bed at home. Through my hangover haze, I pieced it together. Amy must have found my phone and called Mary. "You're finally awake," Mary's voice came softly as she reached for something on the bedside table. I made millet porridge. I glanced at my watch. 9:30. Late for work. "Don't bother," I said, pushing myself up. "You should be resting. I need to get to the office." Mary stepped in front of me, blocking my path. "Please eat something first. This millet, it's special, from Tom's hometown. It's good for your stomach." "Save your special millet for someone who matters to you," I said coldly, pulling away. "I won't drink it." "No, wait!" Her voice cracked with desperation. "I didn't accept anything else he sent. Just this millet. I only kept it because it's good for after the baby comes. Everything I do is for our baby." Her eyes were swimming with tears as she gripped my hand. I looked at her directly, my voice firm but tired. "Mary, listen to me. As long as we're married, you're my wife. I can't handle you being, whatever this is, with another man. You have two choices. Divorce me now and be with whoever you want, or stay away from him until the baby's born. This hurts too much." Mary broke down, clinging to me like a lifeline. "He called yesterday," she sobbed. "Said he had no clothes, needed money. I didn't give him any. I just took some of your old things. That's all." Something snapped inside me. "Oh, so he likes my wife? Fine. He can have her. He needs clothes? He can have those too. What's next? When he asks for shares in my company, should I hand those over as well?" My voice had risen to a shout, making her flinch. She wouldn't meet my eyes, stammering through her tears. "Husband, he says fixing cars is too hard. Could you, maybe, find him a place in your company?" The audacity of her request hung in the air between us like poison. Why not just hand him my manager's position while we're at it? I stared at the woman before me, my wife of so many years, and suddenly felt like I was looking at a stranger. This was the same person who once stood firm against nepotism when we were building our company from scratch. Now here she was, trying to push an unqualified man into management just because, what? Because she had feelings for him? I'd reached my limit. "Don't be greedy," I spat out, turning away before she could respond. As I drove through the city's crowded streets, I noticed my cheeks were wet. All those times I told myself to let go, to move on, meant nothing. Every little thing about her and Tom still cut like a knife. At the office, Amy picked up on my mood right away. She had this way of reading people, of knowing exactly what they needed. Maybe that's why I opened up to her. When you're drowning in loneliness, even the smallest kindness feels like a lifeline. As I poured out my marriage troubles, I found myself pulling her close. She froze for a moment, then slowly wrapped her arms around me, guiding my head to rest against her chest. 6 months. That's how long it had been since I'd felt genuine warmth in an embrace. Something shifted between us after that day. She stopped performing at company events, choosing instead to stay by my side. Having her there, it helped, more than I'd like to admit. But we kept things professional, never crossing that invisible line. Then came that lunch hour. We were walking through a quiet alley when Tom appeared, a small, grease-stained figure blocking our path. "George," he called out, his voice echoing off the narrow walls. I know I messed up, But I love your sister-in-law. She's avoiding me now. You said something to her, didn't you? His eyes darted between me and Amy before he continued. Look at you. You've got everything. Even this beautiful young star by your side. Please, just let Mary be with me. Then he did something I never expected. He dropped to his knees. The sight of him there, this pathetic figure begging for my wife, something snapped. All I could see was Mary's gentle face, her beautiful smile, and this worm thinking he deserved her. My fist moved before my brain could stop it. I slammed him against the wall, letting out months of pent-up rage. If Amy hadn't pulled me back, I might not have stopped. I've already stepped aside, I snarled at him. Stay out of my sight, or this happens every time I see you. I stepped over his crumpled form, ready to walk away. But Tom wasn't done. He scrambled to his feet and blocked our path again. You say you've let us be together, but why won't Mary see me? Tom's voice cracked with desperation. She's about to give birth. She needs me there. His persistence earned him another beating, this time leaving him sprawled on the ground. Yet he kept talking through bloodied lips. George, I won't give up. Mary doesn't love you anymore. Only I truly care for her. I moved to strike him again, but Amy held me back with surprising strength. Amy, I said suddenly, I need a favor. When she asked what kind, I explained my plan. She couldn't help but laugh, playfully swatting my arm. You're terrible, she teased, but clever. When Mary's due date arrived, I'd arranged for her admission to the city's finest maternity hospital. She asked me to stay with her, though I would have anyway. Despite everything, she was once the love of my life and now carried my child. I made sure she had 2 dedicated nurses attending to her every need. Even after everything, I couldn't bear to see her suffer. She had been my guiding light during my darkest times, warming my frozen heart. The delivery room doors burst open, and a nurse called out, Bed 18, twin boys, family members? I rushed forward with the nurses, carefully taking my sons into my arms. Pushing Mary's bed back to the ward, I caught her looking at me with such tenderness that for a moment, I almost believed she still loved me. They're perfect, she whispered, her eyes never leaving the babies. I can't stop looking at them. I smiled gently. Focus on getting better. We'll take care of these little ones. She nodded, surrendering herself to the nurse's postpartum care. By discharge day, Mary had recovered beautifully. The extra weight suited her, adding a mature charm to her appearance. We were just about to leave when her phone rang. She glanced at me nervously, so I pretended to be busy with the car, but her words carried clearly through the air. Out of money again? You and your friend never could make a business work, could you? Just not meant for it, she sighed. Fine, I'll send more, but please don't let anyone take advantage of you again. Back in the car, she threw me an apologetic look, but I kept my eyes fixed on my How's your friend's plan going? I asked Amy. She smirked. Tom's taken the bait completely. He's been hounding Mary for money, replacing everything he owns with luxury brands. Even bought himself a fancy car. I couldn't help but smile. Tom's downfall was beginning, and it couldn't happen to a more deserving person. The man who destroyed my family would soon learn actions have consequences. After declining countless dinner invitations from Mary, I finally agreed to one. I arrived with arms full of baby supplies, and seeing how our twins had grown made my heart ache. I didn't want to put them down. Mary still looked beautiful, but exhaustion had carved shadows under her eyes. Whether from caring for the babies or dealing with Tom's demands, I couldn't tell. As we prepared to eat, she suddenly wrapped her arms around me from behind, pressing her forehead between my shoulder blades. Honey, she whispered, her voice breaking, if I said I regret everything, would you forgive me? I've realized it's always been you I loved. I felt her tears soaking through my shirt. When her sobs finally quieted, I gently removed her hands and stepped away, creating a gulf between us. The pain in her eyes when I moved away was raw, unmistakable. She reached for me again, but I caught her hands, holding them firmly. "I loved you deeply once," I said, looking straight into her eyes. "But I loved the old Mary, the one who was ambitious, gentle, who filled her thoughts with our future together. You changed. Do you have any idea what it did to me when you said you loved someone else?" I didn't sleep for a month straight. I kept asking myself what I did wrong, what he did right. But it doesn't matter anymore. We can't go back. I have someone else now. We're getting married. Before I could finish, she yanked her hands free, clutching her head as she stumbled backward. Her eyes went wild, head shaking violently. "No!" she screamed. "You're lying. How could you have someone new so quickly? You're about to get married? You promised you'd never love another woman." I barely recognized this woman before me. Where was the Mary who faced every crisis with grace and poise? The woman who could solve any problem with calm determination? This stranger wearing my wife's face was someone I'd never seen before. During my pregnancy, a strange emptiness took over me. I kept thinking everyone should be focused on me, but the reality was different. I felt completely alone. Just when the loneliness was becoming unbearable, Tom showed up again with bags full of pregnancy supplements. His apology seemed genuine when he talked about losing control that day because of his feelings for me. He promised to keep his distance, saying that just seeing me would be enough. Something in his words touched me, and I let him stay around to help. We kept things proper, no intimate moments, not even holding hands. Our relationship stayed within safe boundaries. Then one evening, my husband surprised me by coming home early and preparing an elaborate dinner. The table was filled with all my favorite dishes. As we sat there eating, I did something I still can't explain. I calmly told him I had feelings for another man. Deep down, I was watching his face, hoping to see hurt, anger, or jealousy. I wanted him to finally notice how lonely I'd been, to cancel his work commitments and choose me. But his reaction shook me to my core. He just sat there, completely calm, offering to support both me and Tom financially. His calmness made me furious. In my mind, it proved he didn't love me, that even Tom cared more than he did. After that night, I started treating Tom even better, almost like revenge. When Tom asked for money, I'd give him more than he requested. 100,000? I'd hand over 500,000. I even started giving him my husband's unused clothes. Everything changed the day Tom brought some chickens from his village, right when my husband came home. The way my husband looked at us, that cold, distant stare, finally made me realize I'd crossed a line. He started calling me Mary instead of my name, saying I shouldn't bring people home who disgusted him. That's when reality started sinking in. After our baby was born, he brought up divorce. I couldn't believe it. How could he even think of leaving us with a newborn? I signed the papers thinking he was bluffing, but he took them straight to file them. Even then, I wasn't too worried. I convinced myself that our shared history and our children would be enough to win him back, as long as Tom and I didn't cross any lines. But something unexpected happened after giving birth. That restless feeling that had driven me to act so recklessly just disappeared. Looking back now, I can see things more clearly. During our pregnancy planning, he had promised to take care of me, and he tried, offering to hire help, calling and video chatting daily. But I was the one who pushed him to focus on his career, then resented him for doing exactly what I'd asked. The person who had really lost their way wasn't him, it was me. In my desperation, I invited him for one last dinner. I thought I could win him back with sweet words and gentle smiles, the same tricks that had always worked before. But his words shattered my world. He had found someone else and was planning to marry her.